As we're in this screen, you can see here at the top left, I've got a drawing of a tank, and then you can see that I have my palette that I'm stretching out and pulling down. I'm using a digital platform for tonight's drawing. You are welcome to use pen and paper, what you have at your available to you. You can see it as a color rendering. You're welcome to use colored pencils or markers. For tonight, we're probably not going to get to the color portion of this drawing. But what I will do is we will start the instructional, and then I'll give you a little background of where this image comes from. This is not one of my drawings. This is from a Wisconsin veteran whose name is Donald Anderson. And as we get into the drawing, I'll give you a little background about who Donald was. He's a very well-known Wisconsin artist. So if you're from Wisconsin, you may be familiar with Donald Anderson's work. But we just recently received some of this artwork that he did while he was in the military as part of the museum's collection. And it's super exciting because I got a chance to go behind the scenes in the archives and photograph some of the work. So these haven't even been cataloged. So you won't be able to like type in Donald Anderson on our great webpage and see it because they're not yet cataloged. That was part of my job working with Brittany Strobel in our archives. So let's get started. I picked this image because I think it's a really nice, fun, cartoony image. Oh, I forgot. I knew there was some housekeeping. Closed captioning is on. If you need closed captioning, you can hit, I believe there's a way you can see the closed captioning on the Zoom platform. For those of you that need a little extra assistance, my name is Yvette, Yvette, and again, I will be your instructor tonight. So closed captioning, if you need it, make sure you hit yes to see closed captioning. Okay, so we are going to look at this tank, and I picked it because it's at an interesting, odd angle. And I've been working on in another class on some perspective, 1 and 2 point perspective, and we covered that a couple classes ago. But before we get into the perspective of it, I thought I would do a quick sketchy sort of layout of this because I have a tendency to go off the page. So I'm going to put like a little horizon line back there. And then I'm just going to sort of grid out where I want the drawing to lie within the page as a whole. So I want to make sure that front tire seems to come it comes all the way off the page, but we'll see if as I pull and then pull that back out, it doesn't quite go off the page. So let me get that off of there. So we're gonna make sure that tire sits right about there, and this other tire. What I'm doing here is I'm just sort of marking off where these different items need to fall, because I am notorious for drawing completely off of the page and not getting my proportions right. So that's sort of my own personal grid. This is a computer program, so I have the benefit of starting another layer so I can make that disappear later on down the road. If you're doing this with pen and paper, what you want to do is sort of make these marks really light. So that you can go back and erase them later on. Because I'm in a digital platform, I went ahead and made them full color. The other thing you can do is you can grid out using some perspective lines, which we're going to get into in just a second. But I thought I'd start out with a little quick sketch of what I see here. So I have this tire, and we're going to look at foreshortening using cylinders and which is what these tires are. And I'll explain foreshortening to you. And then we're gonna go back here and look at where this tire might lie. And I will probably not get through this whole drawing. And then I want to show you some of Donald's other drawings. And I thought maybe we would spend some time getting some of the details on these tires, because one of the things I love about his illustration is these beautiful details. This is a lost art. We don't, they actually used these as training manuals. His job was to illustrate these training manuals. And nowadays we would use the computer graphics, or we would just do, a photograph. And so we've lost this really beautiful illustrative art that was used so often in the 20s, 30s, 40s. You know, we really don't have this beautiful artwork in existence anymore. So again, I'm just sort of gritting things out. And I practiced this a little bit before we started tonight. And I'm going to be honest with you. For those of you that have joined the class before, you know, I like to find images that are incredibly difficult for me to even draw myself. They seem super easy, like, oh, this will be a really quick, easy rendering. It's not. There's a lot of technical components to this: foreshortening, forced perspective, odd angles, you name it. I picked it. I've done it again. So weird shadow play. And this, the reason why in a way, I love picking this for these classes is because, especially in the artists, the veteran artists, you really get a sense of the skill set of these artists, of what it takes to create an image like this. I mean, it's just pure and utter skill, trained background in illustration here, watercolor. But this is just me sketching out. I know I'm going really quickly, but, and let me know if you guys can't see. I can zoom in on this so you can see. I'm going to hold that there for a minute if you guys want to take a look. Let's see where this is at. Take a look at what we're drawing. I can already see a lot of my proportions are off. But I really like the way that he's pushing this tire out really in our face. You know, you get a really big sense of the enormity of this mechanized piece of machinery here. And this is the kind of drawing where my impressionist style really starts to make its way out. And there are those that are really highly skilled technical draftsmen that will be critical on every crucial angle. And I admire folks that can draw that way and the patience of that type of skill set. I was recently enrolled in an introduction to architecture skills class, architectural drawing skills. And I was learning about these different types of perspective drawings. And once you really get that skill set down, you can make some wonderful realistic images. But it takes a certain set of patience. So you can see I've got that basic sketch out. That was a very quick sketch. Some of you may have yours already sketched. Some of you I know take a little bit longer to work it out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave that drawing right there. So if you guys want to start gridding out your drawing, I'm going to pull up some information about Mr. Anderson. Because my computer crashed, I'm going to pull it out really quickly here up on my phone so that I can share his short bio with you. And then I'm going to share a few more images of his from our collection that you won't be able to see just yet because, like I said, they're not cataloged. But if you go to the Gallery of Wisconsin Art or the Museum of Wisconsin Art, it's called MOA. They have a lot of his artwork that is not veteran related. And his name is Donald Anderson, and he was born in South Dakota, and then he died in 1995 in Madison, Wisconsin. He was in the United States Army, and he served as an illustrator in the Ordnance Department of the Pentagon. And he worked as a book designer for the Army Adjunct General and the Civil Aeronautics Board from 1941 to 1946. And after the war, he moved to Madison, Wisconsin, and he taught watercolor painting, design, and lettering at the University of Wisconsin until 1982. And he also worked as a designer for the state of Wisconsin, the University of Wisconsin Press, and several magazines. One final note about Mr. Anderson, if you joined us last, in the spring, we had an exhibit at the museum with printmakers from World War II to present. And we had a printmaker in there that did these really calligraphic, like beautiful letter type scrolled images. And Donald Anderson wrote a book about artwork that was called The Elements of Design in Art in Written Forms. And he featured that veteran artist in that book. So there's connections between these artists that lived and worked together. So you guys keep working on your let's get started on the drawing a little bit, and then as we get into the drawing a little bit more, I'll switch screens and I'll show you some more of Mr. Anderson's work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave this image up so you guys can continue to view it. So far so good, Molly. We don't have anybody that needs me to pause or anything.
You're good.
Okay, great. So what I'm going to do now is the magic of computers. I'm going to go ahead and take this off my screen for a second, and I'm going to do this layer. And I want to talk a little bit about perspective drawing, and I'm going to do a 2-point perspective on this one. If you remember when we talked about perspective, let me do another layer so that you can, let me take this one off. If you remember, 1-point perspective is a horizon line and a point that starts out here, and then you come out and you do these things. And let's say we have a box, right, that we need to do 3 dimensions. Then everything goes back to that center point, right? And that's how you make a 3-dimensional box, is everything has to go back to the center point. That's probably the worst 1-point perspective demo I've ever done. But in 2-point perspective, you've got a horizon line, and you've got a point here and a point here, and you do these like sunbursts out, right? Everything from this point and this point. And then things come out and everything from this point, like this, right? And these points overlap in space. So if I had a square where we have a perpendicular line like this and another perpendicular line like this, we're going to go down, see how it follows those lines, and then it'll follow a line back into space like this and back into space. So you see how that dimension of that box now starts to take shape? That's how we use 2-point perspective to create dimension within space. So if we're looking at that sort of grid with this tank, right? If I do a horizon line is low. So if we're looking, if we look at this, if we're looking at this drawing, this line right here is what I would consider the horizon line. So let me take that back. Oops, I don't want, oh. Sorry, y'all. Molly, you got full screen on me for a second. Okay, so if you are looking at that, we've got that line down below. You can still see the drawing, right, Molly?
Yes, somehow I'm a little box.
Yeah, that's fine. That's that. I just want to make sure that the main focus is our drawing here. And
Yep.
if let's say, thank you. Let's say we're gonna do, we'll actually go the point as far out here, left and right. And I'm gonna start drawing some of these grid lines that we talked about. It's almost like a spotlight where you have the rays of light coming out of the spotlight. So what I want to do, and they can go down too, is I want to start finding where some of these points are going to intercept to start building the dimension of the object that we're drawing. And there's some sketchbooks that already have these sort of grids built in for you. Where I want to start is this front tire. If we imagine that there's a square that starts right here, and then goes like this, you see this little box that we've created here. And I'm actually going to start a new layer so that you can see this more defined. So if I have this box here, and then let's do another rectangle here. And then you see this line that goes back. I'm going to connect it that way. And then let's do this. So now you see this line that goes there. So now we've got this three-dimensional box, right? What I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a circle. And again, we'll do another layer so that I can differentiate all these different elements that I'm doing. If we were to draw a circle inside of this box, that box helps me make the circle fit within the angle that we want it to fit. And then what we do is we draw in order to get that depth of the tire. So, right, like a tire's got to be this wide, right? In order to do that, move Molly's face over up there. I'm going to actually draw another circle that's sort of at a, so we have those two circles, right? And then you see this line here. This line gives me that little shape that builds up there. And then, oh, you're just in the way.
How did I even do that?
I don't know. Just floating around everywhere. I'm going to give myself another line here. So basically what I'm doing now is I'm going to just so now you can sort of see that tire take shape, right? That three-dimensional tire. And this is what I was talking about with foreshortening. So this tire isn't exactly a perfect circle. It's more elongated, right? It's more like this rather than round, right? It becomes more of an oval. And that's what happens when that circle makes its way around if you're rotating it out. It starts to look narrower because of the way our eye sees as things go back into space, right? So get some of those lines off. So now, in theory, I want this to be a little bit more oval shape. And then we'll start to really see that take shape up here in this tire form. So for the sake of today's demo, I'm going to leave this as is, but that's something as you're developing these types of drawings, really start to look at if I'm drawing a circle for tire and what angle is it at what point do I need to really start thinking about length versus width for these types of objects. I'm going to erase all of those, get those off my page. Okay, so we also have another circle in here, right? Where the rim is. So I'm going to get that in there. And then another circle within a circle. And we can perfect that as we go on. But we've got this big tire that I think we're going to go with right now. So if we want to look at that, now where do we land on the next tire on the back end? We could start this process all over again with a new set of a squared grid. Now, if I were to look, I'm going to move this down. Actually, if I'm going to look at the tires, right, of where the tires fall in line, this tire, I can't, I'd have to put the image on the screen, but this tire and the back tire they essentially, I'm going to use a new color so you can see what I'm talking about. They essentially fall on a line, right? Like a certain angled line. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use my horizon line to establish where does that fall. So if I start at my vanishing point here and go at the end of that tire, then I know my other tire is going to still fall along that line. So I just have to find that angle of where I think it should be. And then I'm going to draw me, same with the top, right? So we need to figure out where the top, where that's going to fall. Let me get that green back. So if I go, so this is just a matter of spatial recognition too, and learning where things fall in the spatial relationship. So, and this is one of the places where I struggle sometimes. So I'm gonna say, I don't know why this is oh, I see why. Okay, we'll go back up here. Technology. So I'm gonna draw another line here and another parallel line here. And we're just basically looking at, and those need to go all the way down to my green line. And when you think about it, this tire is back further in space, so it's going to be smaller. Okay. I think we've got that. So now let me get back to my blue. And we'll do the same thing. If you remember, we'll do this foreshortened circle, right? So we've got one. And then we're going to go just a little bit higher and do another one. And I'm going to redo that one. I don't like the way that one looked. So if you're practicing with this and you want to be really meticulous about this, I would draw really light. And then that way you can draw on top of, after you've figured out you've got your placement correct. You like the way this is, where the circle goes. Because, for example, I didn't really like where that circle sat. It's just close enough. So I might erase it and then try it again. And once you get good enough at this, you won't have to do all of these steps. You'll go and you'll do this sort of sketch work like I did, where you modify all of these operations. So remember, we did that little where that connects to make it shortened. And then this is going to be partially covered, but I'm going to do the full circle anyway. So now we've got those two tires, right, where they go back into space, come across. And if we look at the rear tire behind this tire, it's not right. It's not in the same line. It's popped out a little bit. It's like a little third wheel is popped out. So we're not going to use that same trajectory. We don't use this for that tire, right? We need to figure out where that one comes out. And so we need to create our own new set of lines to figure out how and where does that lie. So maybe we go up over here can find some of these. So let's go back up here, get me some pink. So it's in the foreground. So what I mean is this sits in this plane here. This will be the foreground. So we're going to bring it out here. So I'm going to start here. And there's a way too that you can start to get, you know, a ruler involved in this and really get your mathematic measurements to know that you're in the right place so that you can get your angles correct. We're just doing a quick demo tonight, so I'm not overly focused on that. Do this. Okay. Okay. So we've got that. It sort of popped out. I can go in a new layer here. And we're going to do the same action we did before. We'll start again. We'll do a tire. And then we're going to do another tire. It's the same tire, really. I should say circle. So now you can really see that's pushed out. And when you start to get into shading, you'll even be able to push it out even more using the right kind of shading effect. And that's where this little area here will come into play too. So now that we've got that, why don't you guys continue to work on your grid a little bit? I'm going to leave that there for just a second. But I also am going to pull up some more Donald Anderson images that I want to share with you. Do we have any questions, Molly?
We do not.
Okay, great. So while you guys continue to work on your drawing a little bit, I'm going to pull up some more. Actually, why don't I do this? I'll leave this up. And while this guy's up in the corner, I'm going to put a new layer and I'm just going to start adding images to the actual drawing. So we don't have to leave this page. Let's go to albums. To Donald Anderson. So this is another one of his wonderful, let me turn off. So this is one of his Jeep drawings, and I love this. We've drawn a Jeep before, so I didn't want to repeat it. We may end up drawing this in another drink and draw, but the details on his tires, you can see, I mean, just the beautiful airbrushed color. He would have used gouache paint on this. If you don't know what gouache is, it's sort of it's the in between of acrylic paint and watercolor. It's got a really opaque, flat feel to it. So it's permanent. It's more permanent than watercolor, but it reduces down with water very easily. It loosens up with water, but it's much more opaque. And it's probably closer to ink than acrylic. So it's just a matter of if you've used different types of art supplies. What I like to show on this image doesn't really capture it. But these shadow areas, there's some other drawings that we have where you can really see the stipple pattern where he would have used either an airbrush or like the side of a toothbrush and flicked on the paint. You can really see it in tires. Let me pull up the tire. There's another images of tires. So this is a close-up of the tires. And you can really see this in this drawing now where so we may end up doing that on the drawing tonight. We'll zoom in a little on the tires that we draw and get some of these details in where you can see he flicked this color on, and then after all was said and done, he took like a nice white, real thin brush and just did these highlight areas around all the different textured areas of the tire, and it really makes them pop out and stand out and it gives them a lot more dimension by using those highlights. Again, a hidden lost art. Look at all of the like nice flecks. You can really see the flecks here. You see that sort of polka dot pattern. Let me just set that down, and then do you see this sort of polka dot pattern here? That would have been applied by using the side of a bristle, and it's called a dry brush technique. You would dip a semi pretty dry brush into some pigment, and then use the side of your finger and flick it on there and create that nice little stipple pattern. Just extraordinary talent. If you guys don't know, I'm sort of fangirling here on his work. These pictures don't even do these drawings justice of the skill. So here's Mr. Anderson at work. This is him working on he did a lot of publications and graphic design for the military. Here's another one. I really like to see some of these are like room installations that he helped design. You can see the world's biggest business, and you can see the man behind the gun, like almost like a museum installations. He did all of those illustrations on that wall. So these are picnic tables in the forefront, and then the 3-dimensional letters. But I mean, the cutout, that would have all been hand painted and cut out on wood. So pretty incredible skill set. Today's sign painters have CNC machines. This would have all been done by hand back in the 40s. So just a little big shout out to Donald Anderson and the artists, World War II. But again, we'll likely visit Don's work at some point in the future. And hopefully these will be cataloged so we can have some more reference points to them. But gorgeous collection. And I feel very privileged to have the opportunity to just go in and look whenever I wanted to. So, okay. So now we're here, right? We've got these 3 tires. Because the 4th wheel would be sitting right behind this wheel in the foreground, we're not going to draw it because it's out of view. But you can imagine that it would be right behind that tire that's in this foreground. So here's where a little bit of the tricky part comes in trying to really figure out what's the next step of where I get these line works. And that's where this grid doesn't necessarily help me because I'm not as skilled as I'd like to be on how to do that. So I'm going to try to figure out, let me actually do one more. I'm going to insert this image in now. Nope, I did the wrong one, sorry. Okay, so if we have the image that we're drawing, right? So we're working on this guy. If I'm looking, let me get me a nice bright color. I want to figure out how to get this angle, right? What angle? And you can start to really see where do these things align up at. It's kind of nice how things start to line up that you didn't even realize, right? So if I'm looking across and making myself a grid, I'm going to cheat a little because I have the power of technology. I know you don't have this power at home. And because I didn't put this on a web page, it's not like you guys can download this one and print it out. But I'll just show you, if you're trying to figure this kind of stuff out and the, for example, the grids that we make aren't making sense to you, then what you do is you've got an image, you can print it out, right? You can start making your own grid. And I'm going to put this, okay, do that. And I'm going to maybe make this a little transparent. Okay, so you can sort of see the actual image versus my grid, right? Not exactly really to scale, but if I were to line it up, I might be able to scale it down. And if I were to scale it down to what I've got, you can see it's a lot more. My proportions are all pretty much off. You can see I made it a lot longer than it actually is. So take a look at that. If you see, this is a good way if you're not sure of whether or not you're on the right track, or if you're like me, you get your proportions incorrect all the time. Use an image like this, print it out, get yourself some magic markers, and I'm going to put the transparency back up. Get yourself some magic markers and create a grid from the very beginning, right? So I'm going to actually make this the actual size. Sorry. So I'm going to just make this the size of the paper to show you what I mean. So you've printed out a picture that you want to draw, and you want to figure out, okay, how do I get the angles? Where do I need to start? You find yourself a marker, and I'm going to use a different color since I already we'll use this pink. So in theory, on this particular image, if we're going to do 2-point perspective, our points are going to go off the page. We can't start from here and expect to get the right angles. It's going to have to go off the page. So you'll want to get a wider page to do this. But you could make it a little bit smaller, right? Oh. Smaller than the paper that you have. So that you know now, I can go off my page and I can say my horizon line is down here, right? And I can start doing that same grid that we did before, right? Start filling out where all these different lines are going. You can do it that way. And then that can get really confusing really quickly, right? So the other thing is to just make the box without any grid. Think about that box that we made, right? As it goes. So that's our 3-dimensional box for that tire. Right? You can really start to figure out, how do I build this image with these shapes? So now I've got that, and I've got my, foreshortened circles here. Now I want to figure out these angles. Where do all these little lines fall? Well, if I look here, look at that top of this falls literally like right at the top of my tire there. So I can go, you can figure out the distance. You can start seeing how many, is this like 1/4 of this tire? It's a little bit less than 1/4, but start thinking about where these things line up to start getting these angles and what kind of angle. There's a trick you can do by holding your pencil up in the air. It's hard to show you on the virtual platform because even when I do it with the camera on, the background hides it, so you can't really see how to hold this pencil to get these angles. But there's just different things you can do to see all of these angles are parallel to one another, right? So if you establish what angle that is, so let's say your vanishing point is working for you and you establish what angle that is, then you can really get that started. You can see if the 2-point perspective, how it's going to work for you. Will it work for you? So I might have made that a little more confusing than needed to be, but I just wanted you to wanted to show you that you can actually print images out and start to really work through dimensions and proportions before you even just start to sketching, and it'll help improve your sketching when you get down to canvas. I paper to canvas. I personally like to experiment and get it wrong because that's how you learn. But if you really are trying to perfect this and get it really well proportioned and beautifully perfected, take the time to trace on it. I'm gonna see, does this back tire? No, I did it. If I had done if I had done the very back tire on a different layer, I could move it and cheat, but I'm not gonna do that. I'll leave it. We're just gonna have a little bit longer vehicle tonight and pretend that my image is stretched out. So I'm just looking at time. We're at 7:47. So let me just see if I can figure out my angles on this. So we talked about this tire up here. I'm going to call that the angle that I want to stick with here. And I'm going to go all the way across. So out here. And you can see it doesn't quite cover the tire. And then I'm going to go up. And it comes from behind, right? So I'm going to make it a little bit. And then it goes back in space. If you really want to help know that that's dimensional, you can go ahead and fill that in with color now so that since it's dark, it means it's going back into space, right? So we can do that. It's pretty wide. And then remember how we did on the tire where we pulled that line out? There, now we've got that. So we're gonna try to do this on the other side, except this one doesn't, this one covers the tire, but it also goes out. So I'm gonna do this. It's not quite as high. We got the tire that comes down. This one's a little bit different because we've got the actual top of the vehicle there. Now we see at this line that this goes up and then that next line doesn't start till up a little bit higher. So now I'm just trying to concentrate here. And I already know now that because remember I didn't make those tires elongated like I talked about, they're not going to be long enough for these proportions to make sense. So that's the other way you can really start to see, did I screw up? This should be longer, right? This should come down a little bit longer. Otherwise you don't have room for all the rest of these other things. I'm going to take that grid off just so I can maybe see where I'm at. Unfortunately, that red line, I think I did on a tire. I did. So we'll just leave that little red line there. But you can really, now that we took the grid off, you can really start to see where the tire needs to be reworked a little bit. I'd go in and it's on a different layer. Huh. Go in and change that up. Elongate that too. It's a little wider, I think. So this is where sketching comes into play too. You start sketching and then you'll see, because I made this one longer, right? I made this tire longer. That means this tire is longer too. So I just want to point out we're running short on time here, and I knew I wouldn't get, I told you I wouldn't get through all this drawing, but you can really start to see as you start to add color in here, you can build dimension up on this and figure out where you're going. If you look at the tire, I'm gonna zoom in on the drawing here just to maybe show you. Let's say we have, I'm gonna erase this. Okay, so if we have a foreshortened tire, right? This is the one thing that I like to practice. Like, this is a good sketchbook exercise, is these truck tires. And the reason is because they're not just these perfect cylinders, are they? The tread of the tire, depending on the type of tire, makes a very unique pattern. As you can see here, this is almost a chevron pattern, right? So it's got like these angles that go in like this. And so if you can, this is why I said it's a good sketchbook exercise. Take different tires and figure out where that tread hits and how the light hits it and the angle, because this is what I was talking about. These skilled artists is really figuring out where those grooves fall. And when they do fall, you see how it falls here, right? But then as it goes back on the other side, you got to switch angles. You got to figure out, wait, is this dimensional? Is that a cutout? Does it fall back into space? How do I make, and I'm just going through really quickly and making these, so I'm not trying to be a perfectionist at all. But then you've got, what you've got on this side now is just a groove pattern, because you can't see the interior, right? But it is a pattern. And is it just these straight lines, or is it, oh, it's that jagged line? Oh, wait, what's happening here? No, wait, it's this pattern. So thinking about, I think there's something really beautiful about really well-drawn tires. It is something that is a very, I don't know, maybe I'm special in that regard, but I love seeing different treads and how they're illustrated. Just because it's a really difficult thing. I did a screen print on another veteran story. Her story was based off of, she was a truck driver stationed in Germany, and she had to load a bunch of tires onto the back of a 50-ton, 5-ton. Anyway, the big giant trucks, they call them the cattle carriers. And this is in the late 90s, early 2000s. And those tires, if you aren't aware, are almost, some of them are like 4 or 5 feet tall. They're huge. And she had to load them all by herself on the back of this truck during the winter. And she ended up hurting her back so much that she was medically discharged from the military. And so this print was, the weight of the world on her back was this tire. And I really wanted to emphasize these big, huge tractor trailer tires that brought her down, but she had the weight of the world on her back. And I tried to draw these tires over and over and over, and it was just I really did not realize how difficult it is to draw tires. But when they are brought to the surface in a realistic drawing, like you see in Donald Anderson's work, it can be a very powerful image. I ended up actually modifying an illustration from a photograph, taking it into illustration and breaking it down, and using the computer helped me to develop that image, just because I couldn't get the geometry on it. And it's a lot about mathematic skill and where that tread lies. Some people can just knock them out. Harold Schmitz was another one of our World War II artists that would just be like, bloop, 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 and it'd be this perfect tire. So I say, if you have a moment, pull some images up of, doesn't have to be military vehicles, but different types of tires. I think those are as fun to have in your sketchbooks as portraits. because a tread is a portrait. There are so many different types of unique characteristics on treads of tires. They can be very methodical to draw. So I think, you know, we look at that at Drink and Draw as a way for me to share images from our museum collection. But this is also an opportunity for those of us that love to sit and draw to really think about fun ways we could just, you know, in-person drinking draws are really fun because we'll all just be sketching the same thing and we'll just be talking to one another. So if you have a chance to do that, use a tire as still life, you know, sit in your garage and draw tires for a night and you'll be surprised how much fun you have and how frustrated you get. But on that note, we're winding down on time. I want to thank you all for joining us for tonight's Drink and Draw and dealing with my technical difficulties early on in the program. If you get a chance, I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. Take some time to look up some of the World War II illustrators out there. Like I said, unfortunately, this collection we haven't cataloged it yet. So it's if you're in Wisconsin, you can make an appointment and you could make an appointment very much ahead of time and be able to see this collection. But these World War II illustrators, pretty incredible. And Wisconsin has a huge legacy of providing artists to the war effort. Thank you for joining us at Drink and Draw. For those of you that visit us monthly, we appreciate you. We are shifting. We are sort of revisiting our program schedule now that we have both in-person and online events. So we're looking at how we can best serve you as our audience. We want to continue to provide these wonderful programs, mainly because we have new audiences from around the country and around the world, and we really appreciate you being here with us. I'm in a new transitional position at the museum. So we're looking at new ways that we can continue to provide you this platform. So I just want you to know that we will probably be taking a pause on Drink and Draw for the next couple months, and we're going to start figuring out our new programs for the new year. So keep an eye out. There might be one already listed, but we've got to revisit our schedule because Drink and Draw falls on Veterans Day this year, and I'm a veteran. So I think we're going to be working on a program. So don't be alarmed if you see Drink and Draw up and then it's gone. We will be back. Just keep an eye on our webpage. All of our events are listed at wisvetsmuseum.com/events. I'm sure Molly will put it in the chat here in just a second, where you can see all of our upcoming events. We do now have in-person events, as I mentioned. So please don't hesitate if you're in the Wisconsin area to visit us. If not, we have some continued digital platforms. Our curator conversations are amazing. Book talks, special lectures. I think our director is going to be giving a special lecture coming up. And we also, of course, have movie night, which we may or may not be continuing to host, trivia night, Drink and Draw. All of these online incredible programs, again, brought to you from the Wisconsin Veterans Museum Foundation. So don't hesitate. Send us your drawings at the curator. You want to put that email address, Molly. If you guys want to send us the picture of your drawings, Molly, put that in the chat. We love to see your drawings, and then the next Drink and Draw, we'll share them with folks. And if you have questions for me, don't hesitate to email me through that email address as well. And then keep an eye on our webpage. We will likely have Drink and Draw starting again, either in December or January. We'll let you guys know. And if you have any requests, again, always email that. We've had requests in the past for color pencil, portraits, different types of drawings. So thank you. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend. If you find yourself in Wisconsin, we have the Veteran Print Project is on exhibit at the Milwaukee Institute of Art and Design. That's where I'm spending my weekend doing some programming, live printmaking tomorrow at Milwaukee Institute of Art and Design. So if you're in Milwaukee, come on down. You get to meet me in person and come print using a giant steamroller as a printing press. So as always, have a wonderful evening. Thank you so much. Visit our events page and don't hesitate to come see us. Have a good night, y'all.